The flashing red and blue lights cut through the rain-slicked asphalt, a familiar sight that usually meant safety. But tonight, Assistant District Attorney Christine Davis knew those lights meant danger. Handcuffed against the cold metal of her own Lexus, she watched a smirking officer hold up a plastic bag of white powder he claimed to have found under her passenger seat. He thought he had just ruined a black woman's life and career. He had no idea her hidden camera was recording his every single move. The Fulton County Courthouse was a towering monolith of granite and glass, a place where lives were irrevocably altered with the single strike of a wooden gavel. For 32-year-old Christine Davis, it was a second home. As the youngest and most ruthless Assistant District Attorney in the Violent Crimes Division, Christine had built a reputation that preceded her. She was brilliant, meticulous, and unapologetically black in a system that often preferred her demographic on the other side of the defendant's table. Christine was a graduate of Georgetown law, a woman who had clawed her way up from the South Side with nothing but grit and a fiercely sharp intellect. She wore tailored Navy suits like armor and dismantled defense attorneys with a surgical precision that left judges nodding in quiet respect. But her success had not come without making enemies. Over the past year, Christine had spearheaded an internal corruption probe that resulted in the indictment of 3 veteran narcotics detectives. She had crossed the thin blue line, and in the tribal ecosystem of local law enforcement, that was an unforgivable sin. Across town, in the damp, fluorescent-lit locker room of the 14th Precinct, Officer Anthony Calloway was lacing up his boots. Calloway was 52, a 20-year veteran of the force who had spent 2 decades marinating in his own bitter prejudices. He was a relic of an older, uglier era of policing. To Calloway, the badge was not a shield for the community. It was a bludgeon to enforce his personal worldview. Calloway had a file in internal affairs thick enough to stop a bullet. There were excessive force complaints, allegations of racial profiling, and whispers of evidence tampering. But he belonged to a powerful police union, and his brother-in-law was a deputy chief. Time and again, the complaints were swept under the rug, dismissed as hearsay or unsubstantiated. Calloway specifically targeted affluent minority neighborhoods. It infuriated him to see young black men and women driving luxury vehicles or owning homes in gated communities. In his twisted mind, they were either dealing drugs or defrauding the system, and it was his sworn duty to put them in their place. "Hey, Artie, you catching the game tonight?" asked Officer Jimmy Morrison, a rookie fresh out of the academy, who had the unfortunate luck of being assigned as Calloway's partner for the month. Jimmy was 23, naive, and already deeply uncomfortable with the way his senior partner operated. Calloway slammed his locker shut, the metallic clang echoing off the cinder-block walls. "No time for games, kid. We're hunting tonight. End of the month, quota's looking a little light. Time to go shake the trees and see what kind of garbage falls out." Calloway adjusted his duty belt, his hand lingering on the grip of his service weapon. He harbored a specific, venomous hatred for the district attorney's office these days. Christine Davis's recent prosecution of his buddies in narcotics had felt like a personal attack. He had seen her on the evening news just that morning, giving a press conference about police accountability. He had spat at the television in the break room. "These people think they run the city now," Calloway had muttered to Jimmy earlier that week, refusing to use Christine's name. Somebody needs to remind them how the real world works. What Calloway didn't know was that Christine Davis was intimately aware of the target on her back. Since the indictments, she had received anonymous hate mail, silent phone calls in the middle of the night, and had even noticed unmarked patrol cars lingering a little too long at the end of her driveway. As a prosecutor, she understood the dark underbelly of law enforcement better than anyone. She knew how easy it was for a dirty cop to ruin a life with a fabricated police report and a plastic baggie of contraband. Because of this, Christine had taken extreme precautions. She had a state-of-the-art dual-lens dash cam hardwired into her Lexus, recording both the road and the entire interior of the cabin, uploading continuously to an encrypted cloud server. More importantly, she had recently purchased a discreet, high-definition body camera, disguised as a designer lapel pin. She wore it on her blazer every single day, turning it on whenever she felt uneasy. She refused to become a victim of the very system she had sworn to uphold. As the sun dipped below the Atlanta skyline, casting long, menacing shadows across the city streets, a relentless November rain began to fall. The stage was set. The predator was on the prowl, cruising the slick streets in a black and white cruiser, completely unaware that his chosen prey had laid a flawless, inescapable trap. It was 11:45 p.m. on a Tuesday. Christine was exhausted. She had spent the last 14 hours locked in a suffocating conference room, prepping witnesses for a grueling gang racketeering trial. Her eyes ached from staring at autopsy photos and financial ledgers. All she wanted was a hot shower, a glass of Pinot Noir, and the soft embrace of her bed. She walked out into the chilly, rain-swept parking garage of the courthouse, the rhythmic clicking of her heels echoing in the empty concrete cavern. She climbed into her dark grey Lexus ES, tossing her heavy leather briefcase onto the passenger seat. As she started the engine, she instinctively reached up to her left lapel. Her fingers brushed against the sleek black onyx pin. She pressed the hidden mechanism on the side. A microscopic, invisible vibration confirmed the device was actively recording audio and video in stunning 1080p resolution. It was a habit now, a quiet ritual of self-preservation. Christine pulled out of the garage and merged onto Westheimer Road. The rain was coming down in sheets, blurring the neon signs of the late-night diners and gas stations. She kept her speed exactly at the posted limit of 35 miles per hour, her hands perfectly positioned at 10 and 2. 4 blocks behind her, Unit 4 Adam was idling in the shadows of an abandoned strip mall. Officer Anthony Calloway was behind the wheel, chewing on a toothpick, his eyes scanning the sparse midnight traffic. Jimmy Morrison sat in the passenger seat, quietly filling out a logbook. Through the rhythmic sweeping of his windshield wipers, Calloway spotted the sleek silhouette of the Lexus passing by. His eyes narrowed. He pulled out of the lot, his tires hissing on the wet pavement, and accelerated until he was riding mere car lengths behind Christine's bumper. Inside the Lexus, Christine's eyes flicked to her rearview mirror. Her heart skipped a sudden, cold beat. A patrol car was aggressively tailgating her. She didn't panic. She maintained her speed, ensuring she was completely centered in her lane. She deliberately used her turn signal to smoothly change lanes, hoping the cruiser would pass her. Instead, the cruiser mirrored her movement, staying glued to her rear bumper. "Look at this." Calloway sneered in the cruiser, his knuckles white on the steering wheel. Brand new Lexus, darkly tinted windows, rolling through this side of town at midnight. Jimmy looked up from his clipboard, squinting through the rain. "Plates are clean, Artie. Registered to a Christine Davis. Address is over in the Highlands. No warrants." Calloway's jaw tightened. He recognized the name instantly. Christine Davis, the ADA. The woman who had put his friends in a maximum security prison. A dark, twisted grin slowly spread across Calloway's face. The universe was handing him a gift on a silver platter. "She crossed the double yellow," Calloway lied smoothly, his voice dripping with malice. Jimmy frowned, confused. "What?" "No, she didn't, Artie. She used her signal and—" "I said, she crossed the double yellow line. Morrison, You need to get your eyes checked. Calloway's hand slammed down on the center console, activating the light bar. Instantly, the interior of Christine's Lexus was bathed in strobing red and blue light. Christine let out a long, slow breath. She didn't slam on her brakes. Instead, she activated her hazard lights to acknowledge the officer, drove for another 100 yards, and carefully pulled into the brightly lit canopy of a 24-hour Shell gas station. She wanted witnesses. She wanted high-definition overhead lighting. She shifted the car into park, rolled all 4 windows down to remove any excuse for the officers to claim they couldn't see inside, and placed both of her hands flat on the top of the steering wheel. "Showtime," she whispered to herself. The lapel pin camera on her blazer was perfectly angled to capture the driver's side window. Her dual dash cam was silently recording the entire cabin, capturing the empty passenger seat and her briefcase. In the cruiser, Calloway unbuckled his seatbelt. "You stay here, rookie," he commanded. "Let me handle this one." Jimmy looked uneasy. "Artie, it's a minor traffic violation. Just write a warning." "I know exactly how to handle my traffic stops," Calloway barked. He stepped out into the pouring rain, grabbing a heavy metal mag-light flashlight. He didn't put on his issued body camera. In his precinct, it was notoriously common for cameras to malfunction or have dead batteries during late-night stops. Calloway took his time approaching the vehicle. He walked with a heavy, arrogant swagger, shining his blinding flashlight through the back windows, scanning the back seat before finally stopping at Christine's window. He shone the beam directly into her eyes, trying to disorient her. "Do you know why I pulled you over tonight, girl?" Calloway asked, his tone aggressively informal and deliberately disrespectful. Christine squinted against the harsh light, keeping her voice calm, modulated, and professional. "Good evening, officer. No, I am not aware of any reason for this traffic stop. I was driving the speed limit and maintaining my lane." "You swerved over the center line," Calloway stated, lowering the flashlight just enough to sneer at her. "Let me see your license, registration, and proof of insurance." "I have them right here, officer," Christine said slowly, announcing her movements before making them. "I'm reaching into my center console to retrieve my wallet." She handed over the documents. Calloway snatched them from her fingers. He looked at the license, feigning ignorance. "Christine Davis." "Well, well, you're a long way from home, Christine. What are you doing out on the streets this late?" "I am an assistant district attorney returning home from the courthouse," Christine replied, her eyes locked onto his. "And I would appreciate it if you addressed me formally, officer." She leaned forward slightly, reading his badge. "Officer Calloway." Calloway chuckled, a dry, rasping sound. "An ADA? Is that right? Well, the law applies to everyone, doesn't it? Even fancy lawyers in expensive cars." He leaned closer to the window, invading her personal space, his face inches from hers. He sniffed the air theatrically. Christine knew exactly what was coming next. It was the oldest trick in the corrupt cop playbook. "You know, Christine," Calloway said, his voice dropping to a menacing whisper, "I'm smelling a very strong odor of marijuana coming from inside this vehicle." Christine's expression remained perfectly stoic, but inside, her blood turned to ice. She didn't smoke. Nobody had ever smoked in this car. The claim was entirely fabricated, a legal loophole used to bypass the Fourth Amendment and manufacture probable cause for an unwarranted search. "Officer Calloway, there is no marijuana in this vehicle," Christine said firmly, enunciating every word for the hidden microphones. "I am an officer of the court. I do not use illegal narcotics. The smell you are claiming is fictitious." "Are you calling me a liar?" Calloway snapped, his hand dropping to the butt of his sidearm. an intimidation tactic. I am stating a fact, Christine replied evenly. Furthermore, I do not consent to any searches of my person, my property, or my vehicle. Calloway smiled. It was a terrifying, predatory smile. That's the beauty of the law, counselor. When I smell contraband, I don't need your consent. Step out of the vehicle. The heavy rain battered the metal roof of the gas station canopy, creating a deafening hum that added to the suffocating tension. Christine did not argue. Arguing with an armed, aggressive officer on the side of the road was a death sentence, regardless of how much law you knew. The courtroom was her battlefield, not the asphalt. I am complying with your order to step out of the vehicle, Officer Calloway, Christine stated clearly. She unbuckled her seatbelt, opened the door, and stepped out into the damp, freezing air. She was shivering, whether from the cold or the adrenaline, she couldn't tell. Turn around! Face the vehicle! Hands on the roof! Calloway barked. Christine complied. Calloway kicked her legs apart roughly, a completely unnecessary use of physical force. He patted her down, his hands lingering a little too long, a little too aggressively along her waistline and pockets. It was designed to humiliate her, to strip away her authority, and reduce her to just another suspect on the street. From the cruiser, Officer Jimmy Morrison finally stepped out, standing a few feet away, looking deeply conflicted. Everything all right, Artie? He called out nervously. Just fine, Morrison, Calloway shouted back over his shoulder. Keep an eye on the suspect. I'm conducting a probable cause search of the cabin. Christine turned her head slightly to look at Jimmy. Officer, she said calmly, her voice carrying over the rain. I want you to note for the record that I have explicitly denied consent for this search. Your partner is acting outside the bounds of the law. Jimmy swallowed hard, looking away, unable to meet her gaze. The code of silence was already suffocating him. Calloway leaned into the driver's side of the Lexus. He began tearing through the vehicle with reckless abandon. He pulled everything out of the center console, receipts, lip balm, charging cables, throwing them onto the leather seats. He opened the glove compartment, scattering the owner's manual and insurance papers across the floorboards. He was putting on a show, tearing her pristine sanctuary apart. But Christine wasn't watching Calloway's back. She was entirely focused on the knowledge that her dual dash cam, perfectly mounted beneath her rearview mirror, was recording every micro-expression, every movement Calloway made inside her car. Calloway moved to the passenger side. He opened her heavy leather briefcase, violently dumping out sensitive case files, highlighters, and legal pads. Finding nothing, he grew visibly frustrated. He leaned deep into the passenger side footwell. This was the moment, the magician's trick. Because of the angle of the dash cam, the lens captured a crystal-clear view of Calloway's left hand. As he pretended to search beneath the passenger seat, his hand slipped into the cargo pocket of his uniform pants. With practiced smooth agility, he pulled out a small, clear plastic baggie containing about 2 grams of a white, powdery substance. He palmed it, then swept his hand under the seat, before dramatically pulling it back out into the open. Well, 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 Calloway's voice echoed from inside the car, thick with a sickeningly triumphant glee. He backed out of the vehicle, standing up straight under the harsh gas station lights. He held the small plastic baggie up by the corner, dangling it in the air for Christine and Jimmy to see. The white powder caught the light. Look what we have here, Morrison, Calloway said, walking slowly back toward Christine. Seems our honorable assistant district attorney has a little secret habit. Jimmy stared at the baggie, his eyes wide. Artie, where did you find that? Stuffed right under the passenger seat. Calloway lied without missing a beat. Classic hiding spot. Christine looked at the baggie. Then she looked directly into Calloway's eyes. She didn't scream. She didn't cry. She didn't launch into a hysterical defense. She knew that any emotional reaction would be used against her in the police report, painted as erratic, drug-induced behavior. Instead, her face settled into a mask of pure, unadulterated coldness. "You planted that," Christine said softly, her voice steady and lethal. Calloway let out a booming theatrical laugh. "Oh, that's rich. The suspect claims the police planted the evidence. Never heard that one before. Morrison, you hear that? The ADA is resorting to street thug excuses." Calloway closed the distance between them. He violently grabbed Christine's wrists, wrenching them behind her back with enough force to strain her shoulders. The cold, heavy steel of the handcuffs bit brutally into her skin as he ratcheted them closed, far tighter than necessary. "Christine Davis," Calloway whispered maliciously into her ear, close enough that she could smell the stale coffee and tobacco on his breath. "You are under arrest for felony possession of a controlled substance. You have the right to remain silent, which I highly suggest you do because your career is officially over. By tomorrow morning, your face is going to be plastered on every news station in the state. You're done." He shoved her roughly toward the back of the patrol car, as Christine was forced to bend down and slide into the hard, plastic back seat of the cruiser. She looked back at her Lexus. Through the rain-streaked window, she could just barely make out the tiny, blinking red light of her dashcam. Calloway slammed the cruiser door shut, trapping her in the dark, suffocating cage. He stood outside in the rain, grinning at his partner, holding up the baggie like a prized trophy. He had won. He had taken down the untouchable ADA, or so he thought. Sitting in the darkness, her hands aching in the steel cuffs, Christine Davis allowed a slow, dangerous smile to curve her lips. Officer Anthony Calloway had just signed his own death warrant in the criminal justice system. He had brought a plastic bag to a digital fight, and Christine was going to bury him. The holding cell at the 14th precinct smelled intensely of industrial bleach and decades of human despair. It was a scent Christine knew intimately from her years walking through the bowels of the criminal justice system, but experiencing it from behind the iron bars was a jarring, visceral shock. She sat on a cold, scarred, stainless steel bench, her designer navy blazer wrinkled, her wrists bruised from the excessively tight handcuffs. Officer Anthony Calloway had dragged out the booking process with agonizing, deliberate slowness. He had relished every second of her humiliation. When he took her mugshot, he had instructed her to step back, step forward, turn left, turn right, snapping a dozen unnecessary photos until he captured one where the harsh, fluorescent lighting made her look haggard and defeated. During the fingerprinting, he had pressed her fingers onto the digital glass scanner with enough downward force to make her joints ache. Through it all, Christine had remained a statue of icy composure. She knew the precinct was wired with security cameras. She knew Calloway was trying to provoke a reaction, a shout, a curse, a tear, anything he could document as combative behavior. She gave him absolutely nothing. Her face was a blank slate, her breathing steady. Officer Jimmy Morrison stood near the doorway of the booking room the entire time, his arms crossed over his chest, his eyes fixed firmly on the scuffed linoleum floor. The young rookie looked physically sick. He knew exactly what had happened on that rain-slicked road. He had seen the empty seat, heard Calloway's lies, and watched his training officer casually destroy a woman's life over a personal vendetta. But the blue wall of silence was an ironclad doctrine at the 14th precinct. To break it meant ending his own career before it had even begun, Or worse, becoming a target himself. "All right, counselor," Calloway sneered, wiping his hands with a paper towel. "You get one phone call. Make it count. Because after tonight, I doubt anyone in the DA's office is going to want to hear your voice." Christine stood up slowly, maintaining her dignity despite the circumstances. She walked to the wall-mounted phone, picking up the heavy receiver. She didn't call her boss, District Attorney Roman Hayes, not yet. Instead, she dialed the private cell phone number of David Rosenberg. David was the most ruthless, high-priced criminal defense attorney in Atlanta. In the courtroom, he and Christine were sworn enemies, clashing in spectacular legal battles that often made the evening news. But outside the courtroom, there was a deep, mutual respect built on years of testing each other's mettle. More importantly, David absolutely despised corrupt cops. The phone rang twice before a gravelly voice answered. "Rosenberg." "David, it's Christine Davis," she said, her voice dropping to a low, measured murmur, acutely aware of Calloway eavesdropping from across the room. There was a pause on the line. "Christine, it's 2 a.m. Tell me you didn't finally murder opposing counsel." "I'm in holding at the 14th Precinct," she said, cutting straight to the chase. "Arrested on a fabricated charge of felony possession of a controlled substance, 2 grams of cocaine planted under my passenger seat during a pretextual traffic stop." The playful exhaustion instantly vanished from David's voice, replaced by cold, professional steel. "Who is the arresting officer?" "Anthony Calloway." Another pause, heavier this time. David knew Calloway's reputation. Everyone in the Atlanta legal community did. "That son of a bitch. He's retaliating for the narcotics indictments." "Christine, listen to me. Say absolutely nothing else. Do not answer any questions. I am getting out of bed right now. I'll be at the precinct in 30 minutes with a bail bondsman." "David, wait," Christine whispered, turning her back to Calloway to shield her face. "Listen to me very carefully. I need you to do exactly as I say. When you get here, we are going to play this entirely straight. Act outraged, act defensive, but do not tip my hand. Let Calloway file his official police report. Let him submit his sworn affidavit of probable cause. I want his signature on every single piece of paper." "Why?" David asked, his brow furrowing on the other end of the line. "We can squash this right now if we escalate to the watch commander." "Because," Christine breathed, a dangerous edge creeping into her tone, "I have a dual-lens interior dash cam, and I was wearing a hidden lapel body camera. The footage is already sitting in an encrypted cloud server. I caught him palming the baggie from his pocket. It's in 1080p. A low, dark chuckle rumbled over the phone. "My God, Christine, you wired yourself." "I knew they were coming for me," she replied firmly. "But if we show the footage now, Internal Affairs will just slap him with a disciplinary infraction, let him quietly resign, and sweep it under the rug. No, I want him to commit perjury. I want him to file false statements under oath. I want him to take the stand at the preliminary hearing and lie to a judge's face. We are going to let him dig his own grave, and then we are going to bury him in it." "You're playing a dangerous game, counselor," David warned. "By sunrise, the media is going to have this arrest report. Your reputation is going to take a massive hit." "My reputation can take it," Christine said, staring at the peeling paint on the cell wall. "His freedom won't. I'll see you in 30 minutes, David." She hung up the phone. Calloway walked over, jingling his keys, a smirk plastered across his aging face. "Got your lawyer? Good. You're going to need a miracle to beat a possession charge with your record of making enemies." "We'll see, Officer Calloway," Christine said softly, turning to face him. The wheels of justice turn slowly, but they grind exceedingly fine. By 6 a.m., the storm had passed, leaving the Atlanta streets washed clean, but the atmosphere inside the district attorney's office was suffocatingly toxic. The leak had happened faster than anyone anticipated. Some eager desk sergeant at the 14th Precinct had tipped off a reporter at WSB-TV, and the story had exploded like a grenade in the morning news cycle. Top Atlanta prosecutor arrested in midnight drug bust. The headlines screamed across the bottom of every local channel. Christine's meticulously orchestrated mugshot, looking exhausted and cornered, was broadcast into millions of homes. Christine sat in the plush leather chair opposite District Attorney Roman Hayes. Hayes was a political animal, a man who measured every decision by how it would affect his upcoming re-election campaign. He looked as though he had aged 10 years overnight. Christine, Hayes sighed, rubbing his temples, a half-empty cup of black coffee trembling slightly in his hand. Tell me this is a nightmare. Tell me there's an explanation. It's a set-up, Roman, Christine said evenly, dressed now in a fresh, sharp grey suit David had brought her, masking the exhaustion behind her eyes. Officer Anthony Calloway conducted a retaliatory traffic stop. He planted 2 grams of cocaine in my vehicle. It is a direct response to my prosecution of his colleagues last month. Hayes groaned, leaning back in his chair. Calloway, I know his jacket. The man is a walking liability. But Christine, the optics of this. You were arrested with narcotics in a high-crime area at midnight. The police union is already mobilizing. As if on cue, Hayes's television, muted in the corner of his office, showed a live feed from the steps of the 14th Precinct. Thomas O'Grady, the boisterous and aggressive president of the local police union, was standing behind a podium, flanked by uniformed officers. Calloway was standing right behind him, looking solemn and heroic. Hayes grabbed the remote and turned up the volume. And it is a sad day for Atlanta when the very individuals tasked with upholding the law believe they are above it. O'Grady boomed into the cluster of microphones. Officer Anthony Calloway is a decorated 20-year veteran. Last night, he didn't let a title or a badge intimidate him. He did his job. He took drugs off our streets. It is deeply disturbing that Ada Christine Davis, a woman who has spent the last year aggressively targeting our brave men and women in uniform, was harboring such a dark, illegal secret herself. We are calling for her immediate termination from the district attorney's office. Hayes muted the TV, the silence in the room heavy and oppressive. He couldn't look Christine in the eye. "Roman," Christine said, her voice devoid of panic. "Do not terminate me. Suspend me. Put me on unpaid administrative leave pending the outcome of the preliminary hearing next Wednesday. That's standard protocol." "Christine, the mayor's office is calling me every 5 minutes. "Roman!" Christine snapped, her sharp tone cutting through his political anxiety. "Suspend me. Let them think they've won. Let Calloway feel invincible. Trust me, I am building a case." Hayes stared at her, seeing the terrifying, calculated fire in her eyes that had made her his best trial lawyer. He swallowed hard and nodded. "Administrative leave, effective immediately. But Christine, if you don't have a silver bullet, your career is over. And mine goes with it." Over the next 6 days, Christine endured a public crucifixion. She was barred from the courthouse. Pundits on talk radio tore apart her past cases, suggesting she had prosecuted cops to deflect attention from her own secret life. Paparazzi camped at the gates of her subdivision. Through it all, she remained entirely silent. She issued no statements. She gave no interviews. She spent those 6 days in David Rosenberg's sleek, high-rise law office. Together, they watched the footage from the dash cam and the lapel pin over and over again. The video was utterly devastating. On the 27-inch 4K monitor, Calloway's sleight of hand was pitifully obvious. They could see the white baggie pinched between his thumb and forefinger as it emerged from his pocket. The lapel microphone picked up the crisp, undeniable sound of Christine explicitly denying consent to the search. But the real victory came on Monday morning, 2 days before the preliminary hearing, when David received the official discovery packet from the prosecutor assigned to handle the conflict of interest case. David spread the documents across his mahogany conference table, a predatory grin spreading across his face. He took the bait, Christine. Christine picked up the official police report. It was signed and dated by Officer Anthony Calloway, sworn under penalty of perjury. She read it aloud, her voice dripping with contempt. Upon approaching the vehicle, I immediately detected a strong, unmistakable odor of raw marijuana emanating from the cabin, providing probable cause for a vehicle search. The suspect, Christine Davis, appeared visibly agitated and nervous. During the search, I discovered a clear plastic bag containing a white, powdery substance, later confirmed to be cocaine, hidden beneath the passenger seat. The suspect then became verbally combative. "It's a masterpiece of fiction," David laughed darkly. He checked every box, fabricated probable cause, falsified suspect demeanor, and outright lied about the origin of the evidence. Christine flipped to the second page, and her heart sank slightly. It was a corroborating supplemental report. It was signed by Officer Jimmy Morrison. "I assisted Officer Calloway on the scene. I can confirm the strong odor of marijuana and witnessed Officer Calloway retrieve the narcotics from beneath the passenger seat," the statement read. Christine sighed, tossing the paper onto the table. Calloway forced the kid to sign it. He made Morrison an accessory to perjury to ensure the rookie couldn't flip on him later. If Morrison goes down with him, so be it. I gave him a chance to speak up on the street. He chose the badge over the truth. "This is exactly what we needed," David said, tapping the documents. "Calloway has officially committed aggravated perjury and filing a false police report. The trap is set, Christine. All we need now is for him to walk into the courtroom on Wednesday and swear to these lies in front of Judge Marcus Thorne." "Judge Thorne?" Christine raised an eyebrow. Thorne was a notoriously strict, no-nonsense judge who absolutely detested liars in his courtroom. He was known for holding lawyers and cops in contempt of court for the slightest infractions. "I pulled some strings to make sure we got his docket," David winked. "Wednesday is going to be a bloodbath." Christine looked out the floor-to-ceiling windows of the law office, watching the Atlanta traffic crawl far below. She thought about the panic she had felt when those lights flashed in her rearview mirror. She thought about the cold steel of the handcuffs and the smug, racist triumph on Calloway's face. She wasn't just fighting for her career anymore. She was fighting to sever a rot that had infected the city. "Let him enjoy his final 48 hours as a cop," Christine said quietly, "because on Wednesday, I am going to take everything from him." The morning of the preliminary hearing, the Fulton County Courthouse looked less like a hall of justice and more like a besieged fortress. News vans from every major network choked the surrounding streets, their satellite dishes aimed at the overcast Atlanta sky. A mob of reporters, photographers, and protesting police union members crowded the marble steps. When a sleek black town car pulled up to the curb, the press surged forward like a tidal wave. Christine Davis stepped out, flanked by David Rosenberg and 2 private security contractors. She wore a tailored charcoal gray suit, her hair immaculately pulled back. She looked every inch the formidable assistant district attorney she was. She ignored the flashing bulbs and the shouted questions, her face an unreadable mask of perfect calm. Inside courtroom 4B, the air was thick with tension. Due to a last-minute docket shift to avoid any claims of bias, the case had been moved to the Honorable Judge Harrison Bennett. Judge Bennett was a former Marine JAG officer with a reputation for running his courtroom with an iron fist. He had zero tolerance for grandstanding, and even less for perjury. At the prosecutor's table sat Gregory Pierce, a special prosecutor brought in from neighboring Cobb County to handle the conflict of interest. Pierce was a competent, by-the-book lawyer who believed he was prosecuting a straightforward drug possession case. He had no idea he was walking into a meticulously laid minefield. At exactly 9 a.m., the bailiff's voice rang out. "All rise!" Judge Bennett swept into the room, his black robes billowing. He took his seat, adjusted his reading glasses, and glared down at the packed gallery. "Let's get this over with," he grumbled. "Mr. Pierce, call your first witness." "The state calls Officer Anthony Calloway," Pierce announced. Calloway stood up from the front row of the gallery. He had worn his Class A dress uniform for the occasion, complete with a chest full of commendations he had earned decades ago. He walked to the witness stand with a swagger that bordered on theatrical, placing his left hand on the Bible and raising his right. He swore to tell the truth, the whole truth, and nothing but the truth. Under direct examination, Pierce led Calloway through the events of that rainy Tuesday night. Calloway was a seasoned testifier. He spoke clearly, maintaining eye contact with the judge, painting a picture of a routine traffic patrol that yielded an unexpected and tragic discovery. "Officer Calloway, what prompted you to initiate the traffic stop?" Pierce asked. "The defendant's vehicle crossed the double yellow line, an unsafe lane, change in hazardous weather conditions." Calloway lied smoothly, his face a portrait of civic duty. "And what happened when you approached the vehicle?" "As soon as the window was lowered, I was hit with the overwhelming odor of raw marijuana. Given my 20 years of training and experience, I immediately recognized the scent, which provided me with probable cause to conduct a search of the vehicle." Pierce nodded. "Did the defendant cooperate?" Calloway let out a heavy, disappointed sigh. "No, sir. She was highly agitated, erratic. She aggressively denied consent, but given the probable cause, I proceeded. During my search of the passenger side footwell, I discovered a clear plastic baggie containing 2 grams of a white powder, which field tested positive for cocaine." "Thank you, officer. Nothing further." Pierce sat down, satisfied. He had established probable cause, discovery, and chain of custody. Judge Bennett turned his gaze to the defense table. "Mr. Rosenberg, your witness?" David Rosenberg stood up slowly, buttoning his suit jacket. He didn't carry a legal pad. He didn't carry any notes. He walked to the center of the courtroom, his eyes locked onto Calloway, like a hawk zeroing in on a field mouse. "Officer Calloway," David began, his voice surprisingly soft, echoing in the dead silent courtroom. 20 years on the force. You must have conducted thousands of traffic stops. You consider yourself an expert in procedure, don't you?" "I know the law, Counselor," Calloway replied, a smug smile tugging at the corner of his mouth. "I'm sure you do. Now you testified under oath today, and in your sworn police report, that my client was driving erratically. You are absolutely certain she crossed the double yellow line?" "I saw it with my own eyes. And the smell of marijuana. You are absolutely certain it was present?" "Overwhelmingly so, yes." David paced slowly in front of the jury box. "And the cocaine? You are absolutely certain, under penalty of perjury, that you found that baggie beneath the passenger seat of Ms. Davis's Lexus?" Calloway leaned forward, gripping the edges of the witness stand. "I found the drugs exactly where I said I found them, Mr. Rosenberg. Under the seat. Not in your pocket?" David asked, his voice dropping to a dangerous whisper. The courtroom collective held its breath. Special Prosecutor Pierce half stood from his chair. "Objection, Your Honor. Argumentative." "Overruled," Judge Bennett barked, leaning forward, his interest suddenly piqued. "Answer the question, officer." Calloway scoffed, shaking his head. "No, Counselor. It was not in my pocket. I don't carry illegal narcotics on my person." "Perfect," David said, a terrifying, razor-sharp smile breaking across his face. He turned to the bench. "Your Honor, the defense would like to introduce into evidence Defense Exhibit A, a digital video and audio file, time-stamped and geolocated, which has been independently verified and authenticated by Celebrite Digital Forensics." Pierce jumped up. "Your Honor, the state has not been provided with any video evidence during discovery." "Because it is impeachment evidence, Your Honor," David countered smoothly, his voice rising with theatrical authority. "Under Georgia law, we are not required to disclose impeachment evidence intended solely to prove a state's witness is committing perjury on the stand." Judge Bennett's eyes narrowed. He looked at David, then at Calloway, who suddenly looked as though he had swallowed a stone. "I will allow it. Play the video, Mr. Rosenberg. But it better be exactly what you claim it is." David gestured to a technician sitting behind the defense table. The large 85-inch flat-screen monitors mounted on the courtroom walls flickered to life. The courtroom was instantly plunged into the high-definition reality of Christine's vehicle. The video was split-screen. The left side showed the wide-angle view of the dual dashcam, perfectly illuminating the interior of the car. The right side showed the hidden lapel camera view, capturing Calloway from the chest up. First, the audio played. Crisp, clear, and damning. "Officer Calloway, there is no marijuana in this vehicle." Christine's voice echoed through the courtroom speakers. "I am an officer of the court. I do not use illegal narcotics. The smell you are claiming is fictitious." Then came the visual. The entire gallery watched in horrified fascination as Calloway forced Christine out of the car. The footage showed Calloway tearing through the spotless interior, and then came the magician's trick. On the massive screens, played in pristine 1080p resolution, every single person in the courtroom watched as Officer Anthony Calloway plunged his left hand into his cargo pocket. They watched his fingers pinch the small, clear baggie. They watched him palm the drugs, sweep his empty hand under the passenger seat, and pull the baggie out into the open as if he had just discovered it. "Well, well, well," Calloway's voice sneered from the speakers. "Look what we have here, Morrison." The video paused, freezing on a high-resolution frame of Calloway holding the planted evidence, his hand clearly emerging from an upward trajectory, nowhere near the floorboards. The silence in the courtroom was absolute. It was a suffocating, heavy vacuum, the kind of silence that precedes an explosive shockwave. On the witness stand, Anthony Calloway had turned the color of wet ash. The smug arrogance was entirely gone, replaced by the wide-eyed primal terror of an animal that has just stepped into a steel jaw trap. He opened his mouth to speak, but no words came out. David Rosenberg turned slowly from the monitors and locked eyes with the disgraced cop. "Officer Calloway, would you like to revise your previous sworn testimony, or would you like me to play it again in slow motion?" The eruption was instantaneous. The gallery exploded into a cacophony of shouts and gasps. Reporters furiously typed on their phones, racing to break the news that the city's most explosive drug case had just turned into a catastrophic police corruption scandal. "Bang! Bang! Bang! Order! Order in my courtroom!" Judge Harrison Bennett roared, his face flushed with unadulterated fury. His gavel struck the wooden sounding block with the force of a gunshot. The bailiff stepped forward, their hands resting on their holstered weapons, forcing the crowd back into their seats. Judge Bennett slowly turned his terrifying gaze toward Anthony Calloway. "Officer Calloway," the judge said, his voice trembling with a cold, white-hot rage. "You swore an oath before God and this court. You filed a sworn affidavit. You attempted to use the power of the state of Georgia to destroy an innocent woman's life because of a personal vendetta. Your Honor, I can explain. That video is manipulated." Calloway stammered, his voice cracking, desperation clawing at his throat. "Shut your mouth!" Judge Bennett thundered, the sheer volume of his voice making Calloway flinch. "The digital forensics metadata authenticated by Amazon Web Services and Celebrite leaves no room for your lies. You are a disgrace to that uniform. You are a cancer in the criminal justice system." Before Bennett could continue, a commotion broke out in the second row of the gallery. Officer Jimmy Morrison, the young rookie who had been agonizing over his silence for the past week, suddenly stood up. He was weeping, tears streaming down his face, his hands raised in the air. "He made me do it!" Jimmy screamed, his voice breaking in a panicked sob. "He told me if I didn't sign the supplemental report, he'd have me blacklisted from the department. There was no smell of weed. There were no drugs. He planted them. I'm sorry, Ms. Davis. I'm so sorry." The courtroom devolved into absolute chaos. Special Prosecutor Gregory Pierce looked physically ill, staring at the floor, realizing his entire case was built on a foundation of spectacular criminal fraud. Judge Bennett didn't hesitate. He pointed a trembling finger directly at the witness stand. "Bailiff!" Bennett commanded, his voice echoing off the high ceilings. "Take Anthony Calloway into custody, right now. I am holding him in direct criminal contempt of court. Furthermore, I am recommending the District Attorney's Office immediately convene a grand jury to indict this man for aggravated perjury, tampering with evidence, deprivation of civil rights under the color of law, and filing a false police report." Two heavily armed Fulton County deputies advanced on the witness stand. Calloway's legs seemed to give out. He stumbled, his chest heaving with panic. "You can't do this. I have union protection." "Thomas!" Calloway shouted, looking frantically toward the gallery, where Thomas O'Grady, the union boss, was sitting. But O'Grady was already standing up, his face pale, quietly slipping out of the back doors of the courtroom. Calloway was toxic waste now. The union was abandoning him. The deputies grabbed Calloway roughly by the arms. The man who had spent 20 years brutalizing the citizens of Atlanta with impunity was slammed face first against the polished wood of the witness stand. The heavy steel handcuffs ratcheted around his wrists with a loud metallic click, click, click. It was the exact same sound Christine had endured in the rain 7 nights ago. "Take him to the Fulton County Jail," Judge Bennett ordered in disgust. "No bail. He is a flight risk and a danger to the integrity of this community." As Calloway was dragged down the center aisle of the courtroom in disgrace, he locked eyes with Christine Davis. Christine didn't smile. She didn't gloat. She simply stared at him with the cold, immovable weight of justice. She had beaten him at his own game, using his own arrogance against him. Within 48 hours, the landscape of the Atlanta legal system experienced a seismic shift. All charges against Christine Davis were dismissed with extreme prejudice. District Attorney Roman Hayes publicly apologized on live television, immediately reinstating her to her position with a promotion to Deputy Chief of the Violent Crimes Division. The Georgia Bureau of Investigation, GBI, launched a massive sweeping probe into the 14th Precinct. Jimmy Morrison, having confessed in open court, was granted immunity in exchange for his full cooperation, providing the GBI with a ledger of Calloway's historical abuses. Every single conviction Calloway had secured over the past decade was immediately placed under review. Christine retained a powerhouse civil rights law firm, colleagues of the legendary Ben Crump, to file a staggering federal lawsuit against the city, ensuring the police department would be subjected to federal oversight for a generation. A month later, on the eve of Calloway's transfer to a maximum security state penitentiary, where he was facing 15 to 20 years behind bars, Christine Davis made a quiet, unpublicized visit to the Fulton County Jail. She sat in the bleak visitor's room, a pane of reinforced plexiglass separating her from the man who had tried to ruin her. Calloway emerged in an orange jumpsuit, his hair thinning, his face hollowed out by the sheer terror of knowing what happens to corrupt cops in general population. He picked up the heavy black receiver. "What do you want?" Calloway sneered, though the bravado was entirely gone, replaced by a pathetic, trembling weakness. "Come to gloat?" Christine picked up her end of the phone. She looked at him, feeling absolutely nothing but cold closure. "I came to make a promise," Christine said, her voice smooth and chillingly calm. "I am going to personally oversee the review of every single case you ever touched, Calloway. Every man or woman you planted evidence on, every life you derailed. I am going to find them, and I am going to set them free. Your entire legacy is going to be erased. It will be as if you never existed." Calloway stared at her, his lips trembling, a tear finally escaping the corner of his eye as the absolute finality of his destruction settled over him. Christine hung up the phone. She didn't look back as she walked out of the prison, the heavy steel doors echoing behind her. She stepped out into the bright, warm Atlanta sunshine, breathing in the clean air. The storm was finally over. She had work to do. If this story of justice served, made your blood pump, hit that like button and subscribe to the channel right now. We bring you the most intense, jaw-dropping stories of revenge, legal drama, and real-world karma every single week. What would you have done in Christine's situation? Would you have stayed calm or lost your cool? Drop your thoughts in the comments below. I read every single one.